Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following everything happening with the latest gaming hardware. And today we have hands-on report of the latest gaming hardware. I'm Damon Hatfield. Two very special guests join us today: Kat Bailey from IGN News and Bo Moore from IGN Tech. Both of them were recently invited to Sony's offices in the San Francisco Bay Area and got to go hands-on with the PlayStation 5 Pro. We'll hear about that in just a sec. But of course, we need to keep things fair and balanced. So here to provide an Xbox perspective on things is Destin Legarie, frequent guest on IGN's Xbox Podcast Unlocked. But let's get right to it. Bo, you got to go hands-on with the PlayStation 5 Pro. What were your first impressions?
I think I might be a PS5 Pro defender now. I know everyone has been up in arms about the price, and I'm sure we'll talk about more of that in a second, but it is pretty impressive, to be honest. The big takeaway is that all of the developers pretty much always, the PS5, you've always had to choose between favor performance or favor graphics. And the PS5 Pro just puts those together. You get basically the fidelity of the graphics mode at the performance of performance mode. You want to know how PS5 Pro is gonna look? That's what it is.
Kat, were you similarly impressed?
I'm a little bit more mixed on the PlayStation 5 Pro. So when it was first announced and they said that it was going to be very expensive at about $700, $800 if you want to get the disk drive, which frankly I do for a lot of different reasons, I kind of mentally thought to myself, I don't think I'm going to be upgrading anytime soon. There's a lot of reasons why I'm not. And when I went to the actual event, I came away impressed by some of the games that I saw, especially Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I've been playing a lot of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and on PS5 Pro, it's just a massive improvement, no doubt about that. I think my biggest concern coming out of it is that it's really inconsistent support among all the different devs. Certainly, first party is extremely well supported. For example, the Horizon Forbidden West, Spider-Man, games like that. But once you get past the 40 to 50, you start to have questions about just how much the PS5 Pro is going to mean. And we're going to be into a situation where more and more it's like, okay, but what is Space Marine 2 doing to actually be able to support this extra power? So I came out of it going, okay, like there are meaningful improvements for certain games, but also I came away with some questions.
So break down for us what your visit was like. Sony has you over and they bring you into a room. Here's the PlayStation 5 Pro. Did they give you a demonstration? Did they just hand you the controller and let you play? How did everything go?
Yeah, so it was a big demo room. There were a bunch of different stations set up with, they conveniently had a TV on top and a TV on bottom with the game playing on both. So you had the PS5 Pro running on top, the original PS5 running on bottom, and there were, I think, maybe a dozen or so different stations, which, like Kat said, we had Horizon, other first-party games like Spider-Man 2, Ratchet and Clank, Last of Us, Gran Turismo, Hogwarts Legacy, several others. And we got a chance to play both, but for the most part, we were playing the PS5 Pro version, and then a developer or whoever was there representing the game was basically playing along with us, trying to mimic our movements on the original version so that we could really just look back and forth and see the differences. And, on the bottom, they would swap between the graphics mode, which again, when they were on favor graphics on the PS5, it looked pretty much the same as the PS5 Pro. But if you then went and played that version, you often could feel, oh, this is more sluggish. This is the 30 FPS version. This is not quite as smooth. And then when you switch over to the performance mode on PS5, yeah, it feels a lot better to play, but then the graphical difference is a lot more noticeable because you've got the really nice looking graphics on the top, but then it's playing the same. It feels the same as the performance mode versus the PS5 Pro version while still looking better.
So would you say that sort of side-by-side comparison you were seeing, could you tell more of a difference than you could with Sony's initial announcement video that was a 1080p YouTube video?
Yeah, for some games, it was much more noticeable than others. I already mentioned Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It just looks so much better on the PS5 Pro, and the side-by-side comparison is really striking. Other games, less so, I think. For example, they had Dragon's Dogma 2 there. I really couldn't tell the difference except for the fact that there are notable frame rate improvements when you're in the town. And they were saying, well, the frame rate was really bad in this section in the original release. So now it's at a stable 60. And I said, well, okay, that's great. And also Demon Souls, a game that already looked phenomenal to begin with, I couldn't necessarily tell the difference, which was surprising because Bluepoint is really on top of its game with it. As usual, it was outside of Final Fantasy, it was a lot of the first party games that really stood out. Spider-Man, for example, looked much better. We were playing, I'm not joking, we played Gran Turismo 7 in 8K, or at least an AI upscaled version of 8K, I believe. And that's notable because initially when the PS5 came out, it said we support up to 8K. And then they took 8K off the box because 8K adoption's been extremely slow. But then it came back, and then we actually got to see it in 8K, and holy moly, 8K is legit in terms of the amount of detail that you can actually see on those cars.
Bo, do you agree with how impressive Gran Turismo 7 looked?
Yeah, every time you make a resolution upgrade, like when we jump from 1080p up to 1440, up to 4K, and then it always looks better, and you kind of grow used to that new standard. And so it was very weird to have 4K be the worst looking one. We're like, oh wow, I want to go back to the even better looking one. And we were like, well, we were just on 4K. This is amazing. And that 4K looked worse. Like, yeah, the 8K just looked even better. There's just more detail. More, you get more of the surroundings, the environments, the stands. As of course, in Gran Turismo, you're often zipping by these very quickly, and you're probably not going to get a ton of detail. But then when the game slows down and you're looking at those super fancy car beauty shots, I'm sure the 8K will absolutely blow people away.
One thing that I was trying to get was kind of a response to the price, specifically, why is the PS5 Pro as expensive as it is? We've heard plenty of discussion from analysts, for example, about the fact that with the way that the supply lines work and everything, that components haven't really gotten any cheaper, and that's why things like the DualSense and the PS5 have gone up in certain regions. But I think Sony was being quite cagey about actually talking about the price. The times when I've tried to bring it up, I was directed to ask a business person, and a business person wasn't actually at the event. They really kept it focused on the tech specifically. They wanted to talk about what was happening under the hood with the PS5 Pro. And if there's any takeaway, it's that maybe the big thing with the PS5 Pro is it's focused on fidelity more than it is around frame rates for the most part, and that it makes really heavy use of AI upscaling in particular.
But that AI upscaling seems to be actually working really well. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say it is. And, I would actually slightly disagree with Kat in terms of the full focus, because I'd say that, yes, they were showing off the fidelity, because that's what you can see. It's easy for somebody to look at a difference and say, oh, I can see that looks even better. But, like she mentioned, in games like Dragon's Dogma, yeah, that is a performance increase. That's not to be discounted. Like the reason why, especially PC gamers, one of the big reasons why you upgrade from an older graphics card to a newer one is so that your games run at better frame rates, and better frame rates just simply feel better to play. Their gameplay is smoother. You're not dropping frames. You're not getting hitching. And so for those games that struggled to play because so much effort was already put into making them look amazing, and that's why they're kind of struggling to hit those frame rates, the PS5 Pro then gives you that hardware upgrade that can just simply run them better, and they will feel better. But again, Sony can't. We can play that, and we can feel it as we're testing it. But when we put it in a video and somebody's looking at these differences, they can't see the difference in a higher frame rate until we get in there and Destin goes in and counts the frames. But up until that point, and until it actually gets into the hands of players, they can't feel that difference. They can only see it.
Yeah, I think one of the things from a technical perspective that a lot of people have highlighted, the PlayStation 5 Pro is coming out. It's going to be $7. Kat said they won't
700.
comment on that, but I think we all know that they're selling this at a profit because they can get the components for cheaper. A lot of people have created PC builds that are comparable in power for about the same price point. So the profitability angle is there. Separate from that, however, there is a game I recently did a graphics comparison for. It's Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and it was launched recently on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. And most people are watching this footage on their phones, and they're like, why does the PlayStation 4 look better? So I think that's one of the hardest selling points that PlayStation has going against them for the PlayStation 5 Pro. But I will say, I'm looking at the mostly uncompressed footage that they've sent us, ProRes footage of Gran Turismo running in 4K on the PlayStation 5 versus the Pro, and you do see it when you get into the little details. Even just looking at a shot of the ray tracing in game, you can see a distinction between the lighting on the PlayStation 5 versus the PlayStation 5 Pro if you're looking for it. All of that said, though, if you're not looking to drop $700, you're still getting a really compelling experience on modern hardware, be that on the Xbox or PlayStation 5. And honestly, I kind of think it's smart for Xbox to sit out the next-gen refresh, because what Nintendo has done is they've had an old piece of hardware for so long that they're just sitting on. And when they announce the Switch 2, we're all going to be able to ogle at the amazing looking graphics that have been upgraded on the Switch 2 and the new frame rates, versus PlayStation, we're busting out the magnifying glass to even see what the difference is in most cases.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's a tougher proposition this time around, because the PS4 Pro, when it came out, they can market it on 4K. And a lot of people were upgrading to 4K televisions at that time when the PS4 Pro came out. It was, to me at least, a pretty big improvement from 1080p, and it brought marked performance increases as well. And then as the rest of the PS4 generation went on, those differences in performance became more and more noticeable, to the point where games just started to be kind of garbage on the base PS4. And with the PS5 Pro, we're getting more processing power, we're getting AI upscaling and things like that. But I don't know if there's that immediate noticeable difference, that leap that we saw with the PS4 Pro. Having said that, I'm wondering how the rest of the generation is going to play out if we're going to get into a situation where more and more games come out and they're kind of not optimized for the base PS5. And it's like, oh, but I really need to be able to get a stable frame rate. If I want a stable frame rate, I have to play on the PS5 Pro.
Mm-hmm. So we've got off-screen footage of Bo and Kat playing games on the PlayStation 5 Pro, and then we have a bunch of direct game capture that was provided by Sony. Destin, you've poured through all of this. How are you feeling about what you're seeing now of PS5 Pro gameplay footage?
Yeah, so our producer shot everything in 4K 60, and even when you're looking at off-screen, which is an interesting decision from Sony, it's still very difficult to tell the difference between the two. I haven't looked at all of our B-roll yet. This is all happening very quickly, so I will continue to look at that. And what I really want to see is a game running in 30 and a game running in 60 stacked in that fashion, and see how much of a difference you can see. But on the provided footage, there's a definite upgrade, at least with Gran Turismo. I haven't poured over Final Fantasy VII, but the people at Digital Foundry did a fantastic job looking at that. And the easiest way to describe it is Final Fantasy VII on the PlayStation 5 Pro looks less soft. It looks very crisp and clean and nice looking. Technology-wise, the PSSR is probably one of the most exciting pieces of technology that has been introduced into the scene in a long time. It's an AI upscaler that is comparable, at least from what we glean off of the presentation and what we've seen thus far, to something like NVIDIA's DLSS, which has made huge leaps and bounds in terms of what it's able to do. I'm playing God of War Ragnarok right now at native 4K, 100 and something frames. It's just ridiculous what it's able to accomplish. So if PSSR can even harness a fraction of what that is able to do and improve over where FSR is currently, I do think you are going to see a noticeable difference on the Pro. I am still going to say that you're at this time when it's like, well, is it time to build a PC? I got this PlayStation 5. It's great. I can upgrade to a PC for not that much more. I do think it is a compelling option for some consumers if you already have the PlayStation 5.
Okay, Bo, you sounded like you were coming around on the PS5 Pro. Are you coming around on the price tag?
A little bit, yeah, because Dustin's been saying you can build a PC for around that price, but I mean, we put together a spec list and it was closer to 850, 900 for a PC that that's when you factor in all of the things like a case and motherboard and everything. It's definitely cheaper if all you're buying is a new graphics card and you're upgrading your PC. Which that's a nice thing about PCs is you don't have to buy an entirely new system. If you built a PC at the same spec level as the PS5 when the PS5 came out, then all of those parts are still great, and all you would need to do is upgrade your graphics card, and you could spend a full $700 to get a way better graphics card than what's in the PS5 Pro, or a smaller amount and do a smaller upgrade to get you to that same level. Still, though, if you're coming in fresh, you can't do that on the PS5. You've got to basically sell your PS5 and try to recoup some of those costs if you want to go the full upgrade. Or if you're buying fresh, that's where I think that there's going to be a bit more of an adoption, because the people who have been holding off on buying a PS5 because they were like, well, I've got a pretty powerful PC, or maybe I have a PS4 Pro, and maybe I'll just, haven't been blown away by the game library just yet, waiting for a library to catch up. Now we do have a pretty solid library of Sony exclusives, especially with Rebirth now out, that, again, looks really, really fantastic on the PS5 Pro. They might say, okay, now's the time that I'm going to jump in. And if I'm a fresh PlayStation joiner at this point, yeah, I would probably spend the extra $200 to get the Pro than the base model. If I was upgrading, though, that's a lot harder of a question.
It's a good cost benefit analysis question. Like, if you are a PlayStation enthusiast, I do think that there's a lot of compelling technology being offered with the PlayStation 5 Pro. You've already got your content library there, etc. But if you're like, well, I don't want to buy an Xbox, I have been interested in PC gaming. All of the Xbox games are there on PC. They're part of the PC Game Pass subscription. PlayStation games are coming to PC. And that's why I keep sort of harping on this one talking point. Not because I think the PlayStation 5 Pro is a bad piece of tech. It's an expensive piece of tech that does have compelling upgrade capabilities if you're really into this stuff like I am. And I'll be getting one. But I have all of the platforms, right? Mm-hmm. So I do think it's just sort of an interesting point when you start looking at the cost of PlayStation Plus per year. You add in the fact that to have it stand up vertically, you got to pay for that. If you do buy on disc, you have to buy that additional disc drive. So you are closer to the price point that Jacqueline put together of around, I believe it was $832. And, I put in a price list together that put it like $940 with a 4070 for a PC build, and all of that needs to be considered for any consumer, and having that option is great. If you want to go the PS5 Pro route, I don't really think you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah, I think that it's a tricky proposition because there's a lot of different options. And the PS5 Pro, to me, strikes me as a piece of technology that is geared toward a more premium, higher end type of gamer, type of hobbyist. But PC technology has been evolving by leaps and bounds in recent years. What you can accomplish on a high-end PC is quite remarkable. And I don't think the PS5 Pro comes close to being able to accomplish that. So in that sense, you start to go, oh, okay, well, why don't you go that much higher? And then the natural answer is, well, because of your library. Well, you can get more and more PlayStation games are coming to PC, if not first party, then at least third party. More and more of them are coming out day and date on PC. So you have way more options. I mean, speaking for myself, I am playing a lot on my Steam Deck. I'm playing a lot more on my PC. And consoles in that sense are sort of getting squeezed out. So I'm not saying that consoles don't have a place. They absolutely have a place. But for the high-end premium gamer that Sony is kind of targeting, I think more and more PC is the way.
To your point, Kat, talking about the Steam Deck and such, there's the rumor that Xbox is going to develop a handheld, and I've said it since the announcement of the PlayStation 5 Pro. I think now would be the time to put it out there that, hey, yeah, we are going to this handheld model if that rumor turns out to be true, and just be the opposite of what PlayStation is doing. They're trying to push the bleeding edge of tech and what they're able to do for $700. Xbox to come along and say, we want you to be able to game on the go. Here is our handheld version of the Xbox, and they have already said they're doing the most powerful Xbox ever. That will come in a later date when the advancements are more notable. And let's not pretend like Microsoft's not also working on AI solutions for everything, basically.
Yeah, and to be clear, like the PSSR, this new AI tech that's inside the PS5 Pro, Sony said they developed it alongside AMD. But remember that AMD chips are what's inside the Xbox as well, and so I'm certain that the Xbox hardware team is also developing an AI solution with the AMD team, and it will probably be a little bit different because I'm sure they have their own approaches, but there will also probably be a lot of overlap in terms of what is capable in whatever this next Xbox hardware, whenever it comes out. And we'll probably see that on both this alleged handheld as well as whatever the next gen Xbox is, or whether it's a half gen or a full next generation machine.
Yeah. Xbox has already said that they're working on a next gen Xbox. They've already provided some clues on it. I do actually think that we'll be seeing a next gen Xbox sooner than you might think.
And also, let's not forget that there's also the new AMD AI tech, FSR4, going the full AI route, which was announced like 2 days after this PlayStation 5 Pro announcement. So there's a lot of stuff going on, not only in the PC space, but in the console space. And it's all really, really interesting stuff. It's kind of an exciting time, if I'm being honest.
Well, this is all great intel. Thank you so much. Viewers, we have more coverage of the PlayStation 5 Pro up on IGN.com right now. Make sure you check that out after this video. But first, we have the results of the poll from last week's episode. We were talking about the Nintendo Switch 2, and that's an announcement we're all sort of on standby. We're all hands on deck waiting for that one to come by. But in our poll, we asked you, the dear viewer, what feature do you want most out of the new Switch? And the winning result was 4K resolution, with almost half of all respondents wanted 4K resolution in the next Switch. Kat, you are a frequent contributor to Nintendo Voice Chat. How likely do you think it is that the next Switch can handle 4K?
I think that it could probably handle it while it's docked. It's certainly not going to be while you're actually playing on the handheld. I think probably we'll get a 1080 screen. There have been a lot of leaks, obviously very unconfirmed, of what the Switch 2 might ultimately look like. TLDR, it's a bigger Switch, and that suggests that it's going to have a much bigger screen. That's exciting, I suppose. It suggests that Nintendo is being fairly conservative with the approach that they're taking. The rumors have consistently pegged the Switch 2's processing power as somewhere approaching an Xbox Series S. So I think actually one of the big questions I'm going to have when this thing is finally announced is, how does it compare to other handheld gaming PCs in terms of processing power? Because if the Switch 2 is found to be maybe wanting in comparison even to a Steam Deck OLED, I think that it might end up causing a lot of eyebrows to be raised. So lots of unanswered questions, but tons and tons of rumors going on right now with the Switch 2. But if I were a betting woman, I would say that when it's docked, that it will be able to support 4K. In fact, I would be very surprised if it didn't.
Well, even that term and the term 8K, the real technology behind all of it is upscaling. And AI upscaling is definitely more exciting than the word 4K or 8K, because Digital Foundry has done the pixel counts. The PS5 Pro is not running at native 4K. And I think that's a terminology that is utilized a lot of times online, like, oh, look, this game can do 4K or that game can do 4K. None of them are doing native 4K. especially on the console. They are all being upscaled using some sort of technology, and that is exciting about the PlayStation 5 Pro, but none of them are running native. So I do think that the Switch will get there. It's how does it get there? What technology is it going to utilize? How good does it end up looking? Because there have been some complaints about a tech like FSR versus DLSS.
I think one thing that we should be keeping an eye on is what does the actual dock do? Because right now the dock doesn't provide any meaningful enhancements, but is there going to be some kind of more processing power when the Switch 2 is able to be docked? So we'll see soon enough, I suppose.
Well, I agree with you, Destin. This is an exciting time. Not only is there all this cool new tech starting to emerge, but we expect new Nintendo hardware to be announced soon. We've got new PlayStation hardware coming this fall, and not to mention all the big fall games that are just about to hit us like an avalanche. So it's a good time to be a gamer and a good time for a show like this one. But that's all the time we have for this week. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Bo. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Destin. Thank you to Joe and Mariah and everyone else working behind the scenes to make this episode possible. My name is Daemon. We'll be back next week with the latest gaming hardware news. We'll see you then.